Hey, welcome to Agri Talk. We'll see how this is. We've got some new people in the background and a little short-handed. And another weird thing, we live in different counties and work in different places and would have not talked today.
Nope.
But for some odd reason, we have the very same shirt. I don't
What's the
understand.
chances?
Yeah.
But
Anywho.
it's also wintertime and it looks like summer outside. So
Yeah.
who knows what's going to happen?
So what are we talking about today and who do we have?
Okay, well, today we're going to talk about soil. Some people call it dirt, some people, but in this instance, we're calling it soil. We have a gentleman that works at the South Centers. His name is, and hopefully I'll get it right, Vinayak Shedekar. He's a recent PhD, and he's in our soil and water program there at the South Centers, and he's doing a lot of research with different aspects of soil, I'll call it.
Okay.
So I'm going to let him introduce himself and give a little bit of background, and then we'll start into some questions, and we'll go from there. And I think we've got some slides and some good descriptions of different things.
Yeah. So we'll get the scoop on the dirt today.
Yeah. So Vinayak, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for having me. Yes, you do look like twins, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of strange.
Yeah, the same
Well,
thing here, and a little gray.
Pretty much.
I got hair though.
So yes, as Duan explained, I work at the OSU South Centers. I'm originally from India. I have all my education has been in agricultural engineering. So my main area of work has been agricultural water management, and since I joined the OSU South Centers here, my focus has been more on the aspects of soil health assessment and management using different agronomic practices. And recently, I also got involved as a leader for the OSU Extension Soil Health Signature Program, and the name of the program is Healthy Soils, Healthy Environment. So I'm co-leading that program along with some of the extension folks and some of the soil scientists here at Ohio State.
So is soil a big topic at this point in time?
Oh, definitely. Just a piece of information, 2015 was announced as the International Year for Soils. So the whole world was actually focused on soils during 2015. There was a lot of organizations like the Food and Agriculture Organization who did a lot of outreach and engagement and education with respect to soils in 2015. And I think part of the reason why we are talking about soils nowadays that it's an important resource, but at the same time it's a limited resource. With our growing population and growing demand for food, and you can switch to this first slide, which shows you pretty much all our food comes from soil, isn't it? We grow it from soil. So, and then slowly we are degrading this resource, and so if you go to the next slide, it shows you about the main thing that the soil does is support the vegetation. And as I said, you can go to the next slide. About 95% of our food comes from soil. But that establishes the importance of soil for the humankind since the long time. But why it is becoming important now is that we're realizing the important functions that soil has in our lives. And so if you go to the next slide, which shows the functions of the soil, we're realizing that soil is not just a dirt. And I know that Mike likes to call it dirt. But we're realizing that it has ecological function. It performs different kinds of functions, as you can see, all the way from supporting the vegetation up to the point where we're now looking at aspects where you can do some carbon sequestration and mitigate climate change by developing this resilience to climate change using these sustainable soils. The uh, recently important change that has happened with respect to our understanding of the soil is that we consider soil as an ecosystem in itself now. We see that we have so many micro and macro organisms in the soil. So uh, for a long time, soil was just dirt, but now soil is alive. So we say soil is alive and it's an ecosystem.
I
So
had a
that's why I think everybody is talking about soils.
Okay, I had one question as far as soil. Is there a type of topsoil that isn't soil, like a desert? Or is it just a different type of soil?
That brings us to the soil formation processes. So, well, any soil is essentially just the bedrock formations that weathered over a period of time and became smaller fractions, so small that these mineral particles are now they look like soil. So if you go to a desert, it's mainly sand, but it is still considered soil. And if you come to area like Midwest, we have heavy clays and clay dominated soils. So all of this depends on the texture of the soil, which is essentially formed by sand sized particles, clay sized particles, and silt sized particles.
Yeah, I wasn't
So
sure,
that,
sand, because it couldn't support a lot of life, if that was considered a soil or not.
that's absolutely right. You need to have a certain type of soil texture to be able to support life. Pretty much any soil in the world would support life as long as it has some amount of water and some amount of nutrients, and that holding capacity for nutrients and water would change with respect to that texture.
Okay. So how do you know if your soil is healthy or not?
Well, yeah, so that's again another focus that recently most of the organizations are calling it soil health, and it is very much similar to the concept of soil quality. We all pretty much know what soil quality means. Farmers usually send their soil samples for analyzing physical and chemical properties. But now we are bringing in the biological properties as well. And not just that, there is a slide that shows that the official definition of soil health. So what we are saying is the soil health is it's the capacity of the soil to function as a ecosystem. Now, if you go into agricultural ecosystem, soil health for that particular ecosystem would be how much the function of supporting those agricultural crops. But at the same time, if you go to urban soils, their main a lot of urban soils, our main objective is supporting the construction or the strength. But what we deal with is agricultural soils, and that's why we look at the soil health with respect to the nutrient cycling, water holding capacity, how much contaminant removal it can do, and then also some of the physical aspects, and then the biological, biodiversity in the soil with respect to micro and macro fauna.
Okay.
Now, it could be, I was thinking about that health. Now, it takes different types of soil to grow different types of things. If you have pine trees versus hardwoods or fruits and berries, those
Mhm.
take different types of soil. So would
Yes.
you grade all soil the same as far as health, or is it depending on what you want it for?
So that relates to the soil health assessment aspect, and what we try to do is for agricultural purposes, you need to have a common scale that you can use to evaluate this health of the soil. So if you go to a certain county, take a soil sample, what we do is we do uh, 8 to 10 different tests on that sample, and then each test would be assigned a certain score, and the overall score for each of those properties, the combination of these properties will give you the overall soil health, or
So I'm
the
going to interrupt
soil
you just
health
a minute.
index for that particular site.
So we just had up a slide, Kim, if you can bring it back up, and it was talking about soil health challenges.
Okay.
Is that part of it? That
So this is specifically addressing the needs for state of Ohio,
uh-huh.
but this can be pretty much applicable to the Midwest and the rest of the United States, wherever you're looking at agriculture.
Okay.
Uh, the main aspect is how do you know how healthy my soil is, and that relates to the soil health assessment. And
Okay.
then the next question the farmers might have is, okay, all right, well, this is the status of my soil health right now. How do I manage it, or how do I improve it? And then how does that actually relate to the economics of the farm? Does the soil health improvement actually help you anyway with respect to the yields or economics or savings? So that's, and that, does that have any environmental benefits? So that's another aspect. And then we're also looking into the aspects where you have some sort of advisory, like a 24/7 call line where, or helpline where people can call in to see, to get some help with respect to improving their soil health or managing the soil health. Um,
Was it
so
your
that's,
office that came up with the soil testing kit?
yes, this was Dr. Rafiq Islam at our program, and I think I have a slide for that soil test kit as well. So Ohio State has a really good history of uh, its own contribution towards the soil science as a field, but
Uh-huh.
also the just the soil health aspects. Uh, the soil quality test kit is actually one of the comprehensive or most representative tests, you can say, for soil health assessment. But in addition to that, we also have a lot of long-term research that was conducted in Ohio, that was focused on no-till, cover crops, nutrient management. So we have a lot of long-term studies, erosion studies that focus on the soil health aspects with respect to the management. Um, so I think, just the overall contribution of our researchers in Ohio is pretty significant to this field.
So in a nutshell, is Ohio soils healthy, or what? Or should we be looking at improving it?
That's a really good question. Uh, if you look at the history, the soils that we grow crops in, they were either marshlands or forests long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And for a healthy soil or the soil ecosystem, the
Mm-hmm.
ideal state would be like a forest soil or a prairie,
Forest.
long-term prairie.
Yeah.
So we will never get to that point as long as we are in this agricultural, the soil is under agricultural ecosystem.
Right.
What we're trying to achieve is optimize the soil health.
Mm-hmm.
So is are Ohio soils healthy? Well, some of them are, some of them are not, and some of them are on the downward slope where they are actually degrading. Some of the farmers who are using sustainable practices, they are doing some right things. So slowly, the health of soils in their farms is improving, and that's where our program comes in, because we want to help farmers figure out whether they are on that increasing upward slope or downward slope with respect to the soil health, and then how that can translate into the economic benefits as well.
Now, I always heard that farming the low area that floods every once in a while in the springs would be better. Is that better soil that floods? Because the trick is there is not to have your crop there when it floods.
That's a good point. Floodplain, or the soils that are in the floodplains, they get the benefit of sediment that is being carried by the soils. Along with those sediment, they also have some nutrients that come. So uh, the advantage that these soils near the floodplains have is having a better texture uh, than any soil that might not be attached to the floodplain. So in a way, like in my country, in India, we have majority of agriculture that happens along the floodplains, and uh, so a short answer is yes, those that is beneficial to the crops, but probably not during the wet years.
Yeah.
So as this soil health goes in
Uh-huh.
Ohio, hopefully we're slowly increasing versus decreasing. How do we, or is there a, other than, you said there's a program that you guys just started up. Is that part of the effort to continue soil health? And how is that playing more of a role into it?
Yes, there is um, a huge effort by the NRCS, the Natural Resources
Mm-hmm.
Conservation Service. The NRCS has launched a soil health division that has regional coordinators and regional specialists whose job is to collect data related to soil health, at the same time educate. Uh, the second aspect is the state universities or the land grant universities who have the extensive extension network
Mm-hmm.
are doing a great job of educating their stakeholders in specific counties with respect to this soil health. In Ohio, what we're trying to do through this program is bring together the federal agencies as well as our university efforts, everything together, so that we can have a coordinated effort towards improving the soil health, but at the same time, coordinated effort for educating communities. Uh, so the way the program is designed, our focus is not just conventional farmers. We want to help the organic farmers. Urban agriculture is another big area, but at the same time, we want to be able to educate the trainers or the educators in individual counties and make some resources available to those educators for teaching soil health to others. And
I
then
guess you just answered, maybe you just answered my next question was, is this program like train the trainer, or will you be going out and actually educating some of our farmers as well? But I know, I think what you just said is you're educating some of the county extension office people. So are we
yes,
expecting those to be the trainers of the?
so through the program, we're trying to do multiple activities at different levels.
Uh-huh.
We have our team actually involves soil scientists from Ohio State, extension educators from Ohio State. We have collaborations with NRCS folks,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, we also have farmers. Some of the farmers who are leading this soil health effort. So we try to um organize workshops and field days which are tailored for either the trainers or teachers, but some other workshops and field days will be focused on farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is educational material that we're developing that will be made available to all the educators, but at the same time also the youth education, so 4-H and vocational ag
Mm-hmm.
groups. We are trying to bring those folks in and then make some resources available for them as well, some of the demonstration kits
Okay.
and literature.
Well, that sounds like you're going to be touching a lot of people in a nutshell, as
Definitely.
far
We
from the end
we
user
already
clear to.
started that effort. We have conducted about four different workshops,
Uh-huh.
training about close to 200, 300 people so far in like a period of 6 months.
Now you have, I think we've talked before. You have a, a workshop coming up in Ada or something like that.
Yes.
Will this program be involved a lot there?
So we are actually organizing a full day session in Ada, Ohio. during the Conservation, Tillage, and Technology Conference. That's on March 7th and 8th.
Okay.
There will be a full day session that is focused on soil health quantification, the soil health assessment aspect. And then we're inviting expert soil scientists from Ohio State, as well as some experts from out of the state. And we're also inviting some farmers. And this particular conference is actually attended by close to 1,000 people every year. So that's a pretty good event where people can come and learn about not just soil health, but cover crops, conservation tillage, and some of the new equipment and technology.
Do they suggest plowing your field much anymore? You know, like a deep plow, 6 to 8 inches or more?
Well, that's a good question. There's I think I forgot what the adoption rate is for no-till. So conventional tillage, there are some farmers who, for one reason or another, like to go for conventional tillage, which is plowing.
Right.
But a majority of farmers in Ohio now are adopting no-till, or a combination of no-till and cover crops, or a combination of reduced tillage and cover crops. And that is becoming a more sustainable practice. Number one, it reduces your costs, operating costs, and number two, it has some benefits with respect to the when you have undisturbed soil, you're essentially providing the environment for the biological activity to be at the rate that it is supposed to be, and then that helps you retain some nutrients, as well as uh, retain some nutrients, and then improve the overall quality of the soil that is beneficial to the crops. So
Yeah. I asked that because I do see less people, like turning the soil
Right.
as much anymore.
Right, yeah, and I think that's the whole big thing is the compaction of the ground is, a lot of, recently, or not recently, a long time ago, we didn't want compaction to, it would just make that ground hard as a rock, and you couldn't plant
Especially
anything
where we have
in it
clay
and
like
stuff.
we have.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the program there, with Dr. Rafiq Islam and stuff, they have started with cover crops, and a lot of times the cover crops is the alternative way to plowing, if you would. So some of those cover crops will go down. They have big roots on them, and break up the ground that way. So, and it also gives it some nitrogen and things like that. That's something that maybe we should get Rafiq back in and talk a little bit more about that. But another question is about your water that you're doing. You said you do some water research. Is there anything different in that, or what do you do? Just what kind of nutrients the water brings through it or flows through the soil?
Water quality is the major focus with respect to the water. In Ohio, you don't really have as much water scarcity that you would worry about the supply of water or irrigating your farms, except for a few counties in southern Ohio. Most of our grain farmers rely on rain-fed agriculture. But then, with the recent issues with respect to the water quality in the Great Lakes and the Mississippi and the Gulf of Mexico, the nutrients flowing off from your farms are becoming a major issue. For example, nitrate is becoming a major issue down in the Gulf of Mexico, and the phosphorus is from agricultural fields and but other sectors as well, is becoming a major issue with respect to the water quality in Great Lakes. So our research here at Piketon looks at some of those aspects. We have plots that can help you collect soil samples from the surface runoff as well as the subsurface tile drainage. And you can collect those water samples, and analyze those for how much nutrients you are losing through these waters. But at the same time, that can help you design agronomic practices that will minimize these losses of nutrients and essentially improve the water quality downstream.
So, in closing, what kind of events do we have coming up, and how do people get a hold of you if they want to know something?
Sure, there is I think the slide number 13 shows the website that we are developing. That website is already up and running. There is a lot of good resources on that website. It's simply soilhealth.osu.edu. And my contact information is also on that slide. It's my email address. But if you go to if you just search for OSU soil health on Google, you should be directed to this website. And there is a Twitter feed. We have simply Ohio Soil Health that you can use.
Uh-huh.
And we have some upcoming events. I think that's probably the last slide you might have.
Okay.
So the Conservation, Tillage and Technology Conference is March 7th and 8th. We recently conducted, in January, we conducted an urban ag soils workshop in Worcester, but there is another one coming up on February 22nd. We also have, we are going to post the future field days and workshops. Most of those will happen in spring and fall, and a lot of those will be focused on specific farming group. So my suggestion would be just check our website and keep in touch and sign up for our mailing list.
Okay,
Great.
sounds great. Sounds like we've made a long way in
Yeah.
developing soils and taking care of it since the old Dust Bowl days.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
Yep.
thanks for joining us, and thank you, viewers, for joining us. And I hope you've learned something about your dirt or your soil.
The soil.
We'll see you next month.